Aimee, thank you very much for being here.
Thank you for having me.
I've just been so excited about this, and I know a lot of the audience have as well. So it's just fantastic that we've got a coach of your level and with your experience here. So we're just going to have an informal chat, of course, about about the journey. Of course, a lot of this is going to be about Simone and how all of that happened and the strategy that you used. And I know we've talked in the car about trying to bring some of that to a conscious thought of exactly what took place. First of all, a little bit of background about yourself as a gymnast and coach, if you wouldn't mind.
I started gymnastics in the late 70s in the US, so I was very, very young, considering gymnasts were definitely older then. Started in just Park District classes, things like that, and then I moved into club gymnastics. I competed until I was 18, and then my body said enough. And I had started coaching when I was 13 to help pay my tuition, which a lot of people have done because we know that financially it's, there's a demand. So I was so passionate about the sport that I loved living in the gym.
Yeah. And at that point when you were in the gym, did you have aspirations of where, you obviously ended up being the head coach of the Olympic team in Rio. Was that ever in the back of your mind, or was it like not at all?
I, of course, wanted to be an Olympian myself.
Okay. Yeah.
And then when I realized that wasn't going to happen, my focus did shift to potentially coaching an Olympian. But it was just kind of a dream like being an Olympian myself was.
Yes.
So.
Yeah, and then just took each day as it came.
Absolutely.
So talk to me about the day that you met Simone for the first time.
Well, it's funny. The first day I met her, I didn't actually meet her. My mother did. She had come in on a field trip. Their original field trip had been rained out, and so they ended up coming to the gym that we were at. And my mom had seen her there. My mom noticed her. She had never done gymnastics a day in her life, and I believe she was 6 turning 7. And she, I think she did a back handspring on the trampoline because her brother had taught her it in the backyard. And my mom sent her home with a note saying, hey, why don't you sign up for classes, to her parents. So her parents were interested, brought her in, and she ended up being in my mom's class. And she was like, Aimee, you have to come and see this kid. And I blew my mom off. I was like, Mom, I'm coaching. Like, I don't have time to go look at a preschooler, sorry. And so here's the quick moral of the story. Always listen to your mother. Because my team went for their snack break, and I walked up to the front of the gym, and I see this little tiny muscle-bound girl who is on just a 10-centimeter mat and does a seat drop and bounces back up to her feet like she is on a trampoline. And I was, what was that? And then as I'm walking back, she's sitting on the bar area and in basically just a pike sit and puts her hands next to her and pulls through, tucked to her stomach. Like she'd been trained to do it. And it was just something that came so naturally to her. And I mentioned her to my mom, and
really?
My mom says, that's the kid I've been telling you about. So, yeah, listen to your mom.
Does she take all the credit?
She gets upset that people don't give her credit. We tell the story all the time, but yeah.
There we go. Well, you've shared it with the audience here, so that's good.
So share the story.
Yeah. And so when you started to work with those, immediately did you say, right, we'll put her into a little group, or how did that work?
She started in the level 4 program,
cool.
And she was there for maybe a month, just while we kind of taught her the foundation of gymnastics. Obviously she had never been on the bars before, so that was a huge thing. And then we quickly moved her into level 5. Yeah. And good story about her. She competed level 5, but in the US, in Texas, they do an achievement division and a placement division. So she only competed as an achievement athlete because we didn't know how she was going to do. And that's just based on your score. You get an award based on your score, not based on how you compete with everyone else. Her very first time vaulting, she got a 0. Because the first time, she ran up, hit the board, and belly slid across the table. The second vault, she hit the board and did a front layout over the table. So there was no vaults, and she got a 0.
Okay.
So, and then...
We get all the juicy gossip now, don't we?
Yes.
Didn't know about this in the book or anything. Yeah.
So then, she just progressed through. She didn't compete a full season of level 6 or 7, so we moved her up to level 8 after that. And even at level 8, she didn't qualify to level 8 the regional championships.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because she had a fall on beam, and, that was kind of shocking, but she still scored very high. It's just in that age group, it was really difficult. Yeah. So, and then she did a full season of 9, a full season of 10, even before we started doing Elite. So, like for me, and that is definitely part of my strategy, is just take your time.
Yeah. When we were talking in the car from the airport, you said that she only went elites. Was it in her, what year was it? She was quite old considering a lot of the other athletes.
I think she was 12 when she started doing elite.
Okay.
12 or 13.
Okay, yeah.
And, but she didn't qualify right away. You know, we had some struggles and we had to figure it out as we went. And so then she finally made national team when she was 15.
That was it, yeah.
But she didn't end up competing as a national team member until she was a senior.
Until she was a senior.
Right, because she that had happened in August, I think, of 12. And then in 2013 is when she turned 16.
Yeah.
So
her first international major was?
American Cup.
American Cup. Okay, cool.
So we had never been on an assignment before, nothing. I was terrified. It was way scarier than anything I had been involved in before. Yeah. Because I was just down on the floor of this huge stage, essentially.
Big arena, that one as well, isn't it? So,
right.
Yeah, was that Madison Square Garden? Is that where that
one
was?
No, it was in, I don't remember where.
Doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter.
A couple of different venues. Awesome. So, so Simone was your first elite, is that right?
Correct.
I mean, that for me is amazing, obviously, that because we talked about this in the car as well, is like developing with your athlete, and I've certainly had that experience myself, being exposed to those environments for the first time as the athlete is learning. I think it just makes it even more special, doesn't it, that whole journey?
Right. And the one thing is that, you know, everybody could see Simone's talent right from the beginning.
Yeah.
And obviously there were lots of clubs and coaches that kind of wanted to poach her from me. And I told her parents very clearly, if I ever get to a point where I think that I can no longer stay one step ahead of her, I will help you find another gym. I will help you find another coach. So, I mean, I think they appreciated the selflessness of it, and they trusted me that I was going to do what was best for Simone when it came down to it.
Yeah. And obviously trust being the glue there and the bond, and you two, you know, had and have an amazing relationship and bond, which is obviously more important to you than probably anything else. Talk to me about that dynamic between athlete and coach. Are you very alike? Or are you different? Have you had to adapt yourself to her character?
I'm not sure. I've never actually thought about that, if we're alike or different. Because we understand each other, but I don't know if that's from the years of knowing each other. I coached her for 12 years. So, you know, I basically raised her in the gym. We're still very close, but now I'm communicating with her as an adult.
Yes.
So instead of as, you know, a child or even as my athlete, we don't really talk about gymnastics when we talk now. But I think we just understood each other as the years went on. There were times, especially around puberty, when I would say, "Why are you being so mean to me?" Because she was just being a teenager, but it struck a chord with her. She understood that she was about to push it too far.
Yep.
So.
And you had the rapport to be able to have those challenges.
She knew that she always knew that I was her ally.
Okay, I think that in itself is really powerful, actually. And I don't think all gymnasts would say that. That's really powerful. That basically she had absolute faith that you were doing what was best for her.
Right.
Yeah, that's
even if she didn't like what I was having.
Yeah.
She understood what.
And that comes down to the trust again, and trust can only be built with rapport. That's really powerful, fantastic. So, when you look back at the career now, what were the highlights with Simone? Was it the learning? Maybe an earlier question. Do you prefer the teaching or do you prefer the competition? It's always nice cleaning up at Olympics. I appreciate that. But are you a gym person?
I like both.
Okay.
Because for me, it's like I'm incredibly uncomfortable up on the stage. And I'm sure like for most of you, we're the background people. We're like the stage managers at a Broadway show. You know, like we like supporting our athletes and being there behind them. I'm not a showboat kind of person. So I was able to take how I feel like that and bring it into competition and just stay back and support the athletes. And then, you know, when it became part of national team, it was not just supporting my personal athlete, it was supporting all of the girls on the team. Yeah. So, but in the gym, the fun stuff, Simone's pretty crazy. and so it was really fun to just see what we could come up with her trying things and how quickly. And, you know, one of my favorite things, and this goes back to the trust as well, is that she would be ready to do a new skill and she'd look at me and she'd go, "I'm okay, right?" And I would say, yeah, you're great. You're okay.
Okay.
Please be okay. Please be okay. But I had to, you know, in my face, I had to say, absolutely, yes, you are okay. And I knew that she was on my logical brain, but then there's always that what if in your mind, like, don't be wrong this time.
Yeah, and so consistency of behavior was important as well.
Right. And because probably there were times that I would say, don't do it. It's not ready.
And then she trusts fat.
Right, and then she wouldn't do it.
It's authentic. You're not
Yes.
just saying all the time, just do that triple-double. Just
Right.
Yeah.
But there were times I said, do the triple-double.
I'm sure. No, I have no doubt. I mean, there's so many phenomenal things about what you guys did together. One of them being that we know, despite the massively high level of skills that she performed in competition, there was just as much at home that she never actually competed, and it's
Right.
It's
there
remarkable.
was a lot more at home.
Yeah.
In 15, we actually sat down and talked about what are the goals for the Olympics. I said, do you want to show everything that you can do, or do you kind of want to slide through this year? Just stay safe, stay in bubble wrap, do what you know you can do, go out and nail it. And she decided to just do the routines that she had done the year before, not upgrade anything, because she was comfortable. She knew the amount of pressure that was going to be on her.
Yeah.
She knew what her sponsorship obligations were, and that she was going to be out of the gym a lot. So it was a very mature and good decision for her. And now she's able to, every competition, she's like adding a skill that she's actually been training for years.
Yeah.
But now the
That's
world
got an
is getting to
opportunity
see
to-
them, because she's spent 3 more years training them.
Of course. And I guess that's contributed to why she's so stable in competition, because she's actually been working or competing underneath her skill, like a capped
Correct.
skill potential.
Correct.
Which is always a good message for everybody, not just for Simone, but no gymnast should be going out competing everything that they've got, because they're just going to be unstable. You probably want to be, 80% of your skill level, really, I would say anyway. So
I agree.
that's good. I'm sure you were terrified, though, that what if Simone did get hurt? I mean,
Yeah.
still, there's so much attention on her and you and what was going on in the gym, what she was competing.
Yeah, so I always err on the side of caution when it comes to health in general.
Yeah.
One of the biggest things I've always had with my athletes is try to have great communication, because if you don't allow them to communicate with you when they're scared, when they're happy, when they're sad, then they'll never tell you if they're hurt, because they don't want to be ridiculed. They don't want it to look like a sign of weakness. And because our athletes are as much of control freaks as we are. But the reality is that you get hurt in gymnastics. You get hurt in any sport, but gymnastics tends to be a little bit higher. So I will say that leading up to Rio, I was hypersensitive about it, and it was like, are you okay? Are you okay? Let me rub your calves out. Let me stretch your Achilles, because with that kind of tumbling, that kind of power, those are lower leg injuries are things you definitely have to worry about. So when she had a calf strain, we didn't do anything on her legs for 2 weeks. When her shoulder started to bothering her, we pulled her out of pack rim. It was like, I had no problem saying, hey, we need to bring in the reserve athlete, because this isn't worth Simone's Olympic chances.
Yes. Yeah. Makes sense. As a coach, stepping into some of those high-pressured environments, I mean, obviously Simone was dealing with high pressure, but so were you. Like going out to American Cup for the first time, I can imagine taking Simone to the national team training, and that whole environment, that must have been a bit of a roller coaster for you as well. How did you manage with that, and then all of a sudden the change in expectations?
Well, I think that everybody thinks that we had an easy road because she's so talented, and it's not. I mean, we took our bumps and bruises at camp. We were too silly. We had too much fun. We weren't serious enough. I actually have been told many times, you will never be successful because you're too nice to your athletes. And I was like, well, you're crazy. Like, isn't gymnastics supposed to be fun?
Yeah.
Like, if it's not fun, then why are we doing it? Plain and simple. So when we went to camp, we did have to get a little bit more serious. And it was more of just make sure you're very respectful.
Yeah.
Respectful of the program, respectful of the process, but we can still be silly, because we are silly. And, we like to make each other laugh. So that was the biggest thing coming up through the camps. We did get to the point where we didn't worry so much about it, because the reality was Simone going to get kicked off the team?
Probably not.
Probably not.
With that environment, with the pressure upon Simone, of course, the pressure upon you, did you ever feel like it was too much, like yourself as a coach? Because I know a lot of these guys will feel sometimes it's just so overwhelming, and they just like sometimes you just go, I just don't know if I can do this. It's like it's just too much to take. Is it still fun? I mean, what was that like for yourself as well? Because I know a lot of your philosophy, like you've mentioned, is about enjoyment.
Right.
Did the stress ever get too much? That it was just...
When it did, I know a lot of people have talked about mantras today.
Yeah.
And, we had a couple of them. My personal one was, you are exactly where you're supposed to be, just breathe.
Okay.
So anytime I started getting anxious about things, I would just remind myself of that. And then with her, it was because the thing about expectations, what if she doesn't live up to the hype? Everybody expects so much from her. And I said, Simone, other people's expectations are not your problem.
Yep.
If you don't live up to their expectations, then shame on them for having expectations in the first place, because they're not the one going out and doing what you are doing. You're the only one that has control. So as long as you're enjoying what you're doing, it doesn't matter.
Yep.
As long as you've put in the work, it doesn't matter what they think.
You mentioned about the philosophies. It's important to have fun. Can you tell me about the rest of your philosophy? And that's a bit of a big question, but some of the other bits in there, because we always get asked the question, I certainly do, and I think you have as well, is it possible to produce at the very top level by being a nice coach? And I've always said, and obviously GymCon last year was all about producing happy, healthy and hungry athletes, because I feel it absolutely is possible. I don't just feel it, I see it, I know it. You've mentioned it. I know that these guys are all about that when I've been into their environments. There's no compromise on that. So can you just talk a little bit about that and your philosophy around that?
The reality is, it's just gymnastics, people. It's, if you get too, I am passionate about coaching. I've loved gymnastics my whole life, but when it comes down to it, it's just gymnastics, and it's not worth you getting, ruining your life over it, you ruining a child's life over it, because there are athletes that walk away, there are gymnasts that walk away because they don't love it anymore. And, can you be a kind coach and produce somebody great? Apparently you can, because, that is something I pride myself on. Yes, I did technically always have to stay a step ahead of Simone, but with her, it was making sure that I managed her to continue to love gymnastics and not want to quit, because she could have quit, because there were lots of kids as she was coming up that were beating her consistently, and they all ended up quitting the sport. So we have no idea how many more Simones there are out there, because there are other Simones. Yes, she is suited for the sport, but how many of you have seen somebody walk through the gym who you just say, that kid is made to do gymnastics? It's your job to keep them in the sport. And if they don't love it, if your only focus is on making them an Olympian, they will leave.
Yeah.
They're just going to walk out.
They'll feel that pressure, won't they? One of my previous mentors said to me, sometimes you don't have to worry about selection, just don't be deselected, in terms of other people are going to drop out. If you can just be in the race when the time matters, like you've just said, and other people just drop out of the race, you're already in a really good position.
Absolutely.
So staying in the game, basically you can't win a competition that you don't even participate in, so it's getting there.
Correct.
Yeah, absolutely. How did you feel about coaching the greatest of all time? I mean, obviously amazing, I'm sure. Was it comfortable or was it uncomfortable?
I never thought about it until I wasn't coaching her anymore, because she was just Simone to me. It was just a journey that we took together. Yeah. So I didn't think about it. And then I remember watching her first competition after she came back from her break. And I was like, wow, I see what other people are talking about. She's really magnificent. But I didn't appreciate it when I was coaching her every day, because it's just what we did. It was just our program and
day-to-day stuff. Some of the biggest lessons, do you think, in working with Simone? Some pivotal points that you have taken into your coaching now, things that happened along the journey?
I wouldn't say with Simone specifically. Yeah. I mean, I think that it was more of just my general coaching philosophy. So it didn't matter if I was coaching a level 4 or coaching a world champion. It just... So nothing in particular.
Sticking by that all the time. Yeah. And I think that's basically just having integrity. You are, Aimee, who you are.
Right.
I was going to say, I won't mention about Amber. That's a joke that we talked about every time. Aimee is Aimee.
Yes.
Irrespective of what environment she's in.
Yes. And I wasn't willing to compromise on that.
Yeah.
And, one of the big, I guess, when we started talking about strategy, because I don't think I ever did a strategy, a conscious strategy, but listening to everybody talk. And, I was like, oh, yeah, that's exactly what I did. That's exactly kind of the system I followed. Our biggest thing was that, and Simone and I talked about this. One, if you don't want to do this anymore, we don't have to do this anymore. That was one of the things that went with the expectations and with the philosophy. And her parents said the same thing. I'm sure they were like, well, they would convince her to not quit, and I probably would too. But if she had ever gotten to the point, which she got close, that she wanted to quit, we would just pulled back and said, it's your show. If you don't want to do this anymore, you don't have to. So that was one big thing. But along with that was, we said that people are going to give us a lot of information and a lot of advice. And we are going to take what works for us keep it, embrace it, and throw the rest away because the rest is garbage. You know, like garbage to us. Just like what we do and what we did is not going to work for all of you. You know, because it has to fit into the core of who you are. Like you have to believe it in order for it to be successful.
So it's context, isn't there, behind information?
Yes.
And we spoke in the car about this, that it's important not just to try absolutely everything,
Right.
but make sure that what you're taking advice from does apply to probably your challenges. And so some of the strategic stuff we did in my session earlier was about, you know, what are the blind spots, where are your gaps? Well, that's information that you should be actively seeking, you know, like how can you resolve those?
Right. Well, and a good example of that for me was that I don't love coaching bars.
Okay.
And I didn't, because I hadn't spent a lot of time coaching bars. I wasn't good on bars as a gymnast. It just wasn't something I loved. And so I knew that I needed to bring people in to help work with Simone on bars. I needed to become more educated. Now, I'm an amazing bar coach now because I have gotten so much information from other people. You know, I still don't like coaching bars, but I'm so much better at it.
Yeah.
I'm competent. And, you know, my eye is better. It's quicker. You know, I get to stand next to some of the best coaches in the world, listening to them give corrections on bars to their athletes who are amazing on bars. And it helped me grow as well.
Yeah, and I think that this, again, relates back to what Herman was saying earlier. Kate Richardson-Walsh alluded to it. Find experts, find people that you can learn from. You know, don't stay in your bubble.
Yeah.
And it's you.
Don't be embarrassed by it.
Yeah,
because like I've been called weak because I wasn't a strong bar coach.
Right.
No, I'm smart because I got people in to learn from. And
yeah, so filling in those blind spots at the time, which have now become, again, another strength. So I think that's really powerful. A lot of people assume that the best coaches are just naturally the ones that just know everything. Of course, the best coaches are the ones that have been the most active learners, not a passive learner. You've gone out there to get that information, haven't you? Yeah, awesome, cool. Next question. So, and don't forget, guys, I'd like you to keep thinking because we're going to have a good chunk of time for questions with Aimee. So make sure that when I ask this time, if you've got any questions, I want a sea of hands up in the air, or we're doing the YMCA one more time. Okay?
you didn't do anything.
No? No? Okay, sorry. So what are your greatest strengths as a coach then? I'm sensing, obviously, communication and rapport. It wasn't bars before.
Patience.
Right.
You know, I think that's huge because we're dealing with children. And it's so easy to get frustrated because they're not understanding what we're telling them. But that's because they're children and their brains don't work the same way ours do. So I think that's a big thing. So I know that I don't get frustrated really easily when it comes to that. I get much more frustrated with adults.
With adults?
Like, oh, yes, I have a really hard time with adults.
Oh, right, okay.
Because I feel like you should know what I'm talking about, but not so much with a kid. As far as like my technical strengths, I absolutely love coaching beam, and I love coaching it because I hated competing it. I hated it as a gymnast. I was terrified, especially once I had a growth spurt. And I realized that if someone, because, you know, we're all control freaks, right? A whole room of control freaks here. So if somebody had just taught me how to be in control on beam, I wouldn't have been afraid of beam. So then that became like my goal. Like, how do I teach these kids that they are in control?
Yeah.
And so I had to fight some of my own demons to figure that out. And now I would say that, you know, the kids that I coach on beam, they're confident, you know, so even if they make an error, it doesn't faze them. They just keep moving on.
Yeah. Very, very cool. What are you most proud of, do you think? I mean, there's been so many things in that journey, but something that you're really proud of in there? What springs to mind?
Like, well, I know everyone would say, you know, okay, I was very proud as being selected as the head coach of the women's Olympic team, yes. But it was also kind of a foregone conclusion, I guess, because it generally goes to the coach of the top athlete. So, you know, it got to the point where I guess I expected it. It wasn't, I wouldn't have been shocked had it gone to somebody else, but I was also comfortable with it. And I think that, and I might be crazy, but any other coaches here who have been on the Olympic floor, everybody's like, oh, was it amazing? And honestly, to me, and I would like responses if you agree or not, it was like being at World Championships again, you know, and I'd been at 3 World Championships out on the floor coaching. So the only difference was there were Olympic rings everywhere. So I was like, just don't look at the rings and it'll be fine. And when I didn't look at the rings, then it was fine. That was just like another competition that we had been to so many competitions. In the U.S., we do all of our big meets on podium. Yeah. So that wasn't different.
In big arenas.
So it really, that didn't have a huge impact on me. Yeah. It wasn't until like you step away and you reflect back and it's like, wow, I did that. That was really cool.
Yeah.
You know?
Very cool.
Yeah. Yeah. Walking in the closing ceremonies was like a bigger deal than winning the team gold or Simone winning her gold, I think, because it had become something that we had expected as a team.
Okay.
So.
And by that point, the pressure, the results were already finished, and you could enjoy the experience.
Exactly,
I guess.
enjoy the experience.
Yeah, it comes and goes. Now, all of this sounds like a fairy tale, but that's not the reality behind it. You're also a mum of 3.
Yes.
How is that? We'll have loads of parents here of multiple children as well. How did that sacrifice? How easy was that? How difficult was that? Because you've been away for like 6 weeks at a time with some of these competitions.
Yes.
And
well, I was asked at lunch, do you regret anything? And I had to pause because I don't regret anything. Or I have regrets, but I wouldn't have changed anything, because I understand that living this life of being an international elite coach takes sacrifice. But now I will tell you that, I have 3 sons, 2 of them are teenagers, and they hate me right now. And they would hate me anyway because they're teenagers, but the fact is that they can throw at me, you weren't around. And so that's really tough as a mother. I still have a chance with my 10-year-old, so I'm definitely going to be around more for him. But it does take a lot of sacrifice. And I was really fortunate because even when I lived in Texas, the training camp was 45 minutes from my house. And now the training camps are run at, in Sarasota where I live. So I live 5 minutes from the gym. So I've been very fortunate. Most coaches would have to fly in a day early. And I was home in Texas before they even got to the airport. And then they had, a 3-hour flight and then a 2-hour connection and then another 2-hour flight to get home. So they lost a day on either end. And I know that, a lot of my friends with families that are in the elite world, they struggle with the same thing. Yep. It takes its toll.
Yeah, I'm sure.
On a marriage, on a family.
Yep. Lucky you had the results.
Yes.
But
and they don't always get the, you don't always get the results. There's no guarantee.
Yeah. Dogs will love you unconditionally, no matter how long you are away.
Take a lot of work, though.
Okay, we're going to fall out. No, it's fine. We'll avoid that conversation.
We're going to stick with the cats because they can take care of themselves.
Oh dear. In terms of your role models, coaches that you looked up to as you were sort of progressing and developing as a coach, was there any one person in particular or a group of people?
It's ironic. I didn't have anyone growing up that I aspired to be like.
Yeah.
The person who taught me the most was one of my coaches, and he taught me what I didn't want to be.
Right.
Because I remember how I felt as an athlete being coached by him.
Okay.
And it was devastating to me because I longed for his approval and he never gave it to me. Mm-hmm. And then when I was in high school, I ran into him again and I was, training at my old club and I did something he thought I never would do. And I looked at him being all sassy because I was in high school and I was like, "Are you impressed?" And he said, "Aimee, I've always been impressed with you. I just never let you know because I didn't think you would work as hard." And all I could think of was, that's so mean. All I wanted was approval from my coach. So it's really important to always give your athletes a little nugget, yeah, that was great. The compliment sandwich, that was great, but I need you to do this. Yep. I need you to fix this. Mm-hmm. Or next time, try to do that. High five, or if it wasn't any better, I saw the effort.
Yeah.
Give them
something positive.
Something positive, because that's what, and ultimately, we're in it's got to pay bills as well, right? So if you keep driving kids out of your gym because you're negative all the time, then you're also not paying your bills.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's taking part that counts sometimes, isn't it? So, but it's interesting how that I didn't realize that that's your experience as an athlete and how that's probably shaped your philosophies and values as
negative.
A coach. Mm-hmm. Although that wasn't the most pleasant experience, I would imagine it's contributed to you being who you are.
Absolutely.
And so, is there any gratitude for that process, or is it?
There is. There is. Just like everything in your life that's painful, you learn from it, and so you have to have some degree of gratitude to it to just be like, okay, well, this did shape me. This shaped me as a coach. Yeah,
and I'm sure the positive impact, of course, that you've had on Simone will last with her forever, and the way that she treats other people as well. It's that ripple effect, isn't it? It's
right. And that was something that there was a very famous gymnast when I was younger who I asked for an autograph and she snubbed me, and I disliked her the rest of my life. I still dislike her.
Oh wow.
And so when Simone started, having little girls run after her asking for her autograph, I had to share that story with her because I was like, what you say to this 10-year-old is going to make a difference to her the rest of her life and how she views you the rest of her life. So be humble, be kind. If you don't have time to sign an autograph, just say, I'm sorry, I can't do it right now, like, because this person was like rude to me. And because she was tired, she didn't want to sign any more autographs that day. I get it. But I didn't care when I was younger.
Yeah.
You know, all I wanted to do, I was looking at one of my heroes.
Yeah.
And so that happened. And so I think that Simone definitely learned from that. And then we also got to the point though, where I was like, if you're done and you can't do anymore, just give me the look. We had a look. And then I would say, so she didn't have to be the rude one, you know, like,
her out.
well, and I would say, I'm sorry, girls, she's really got to go, you know, got to go to drug testing again for the 15th time in a month.
Week.
Right.
Yeah. So I'm trying to think about what the context that we can get these guys thinking about their home environments, talent ID. How do you talent ID? I mean, Simone's obviously an obvious talent. You know, you saw that straight away. Your mum saw that straight away. Should we be looking for talent that screams? Should we be looking for talent that whispers as well? I mean, what's been your process since Simone and your outlook on exactly what it is going to take?
I would say that, like, I personally train all of my athletes very organically. Here's the skill set.
Right.
And they're going to identify themselves, you know, can you get to this point? Okay, here's the next step. Here's the next step. And if you keep raising the bar for each kid, that's when they're going to start separating themselves. I know a lot of clubs, they will do a selection, you know, and you're 5 years old and we're going to take you, we're going to fast track you, we're going to do this with you. And I disagree with that because, again, Simone didn't make national team until she was 15 years old. So, and, you know, USA Gymnastics has we have a pool of kids to pick from. But if you go back and you look at the records, how many junior national champions went on to be world or Olympic champions? Because for whatever reason, could be injury, could be boredom, could be just general burnout, you know, any family situation, that kind of thing. So I don't have a criteria. I watch and kids that can move along quicker. So I don't have a problem having like I don't know how your levels run around here, but like I'm fine having a level 6 and a level 10 in the same training group because I can train each of them individually based on the skills that they're doing. But if we're working on series on beam, well, the 10's doing their 10 series and the 6 is doing their 6 series. So
yeah, it's got like a theme going on beam and then you follow on theme. Yep, makes sense. What was the hardest part of working with Simone?
She's crazy. Yeah. She, you know, and she's talked very openly about this recently. She has severe ADHD. Right. And so there were a lot of times that, like, I could always tell when she didn't take her medicine. We were at a camp once, and she comes into the gym in the morning, and she's bouncing off the walls, and her eyes are really big. And I was like, oh, she didn't take her medicine. I can tell. I said, called her over. I said, Simone, did you take your medicine? Uh-huh. I was like, Simone, did you take your medicine? Uh-huh. I was like, Simone, you didn't take your medicine, did you? And she goes, no, but I did brush my teeth. You know, like, there were lots of days like that. Yeah. So, and then I think that another hard part, and I think a lot of athletes do this, is just one thing that really stood out with Simone. I knew what Simone was capable of doing, but if Simone didn't want to do it on that day, she would kind of self-sabotage. Right. And instead of, like, if she didn't want to work on series on a day on beam, instead of just not doing good series because she didn't feel like it, she would start by falling on them. And then she would, like, fall on the second skill. Then she would, like, fall on the first skill. And then she would get to the point where I'd be like, all right, now you're just being stupid. You know, I was like, you're being dangerous. I told her, I'm not going to allow you to trash your gymnastics. Like, we're moving on. We're not doing this anymore. Where a lot of coaches would sit there and say, you're going to stay here until you do what I want you to do. And then that takes all of the power away from the athlete. And with Simone, and I guess I do it with all of my athletes, but she was an extreme case. With her, it was like, okay, you want the power? You have the power today. I'll see you tomorrow. Okay. Yeah. You know, like, I'll give it to you today, but when you come in tomorrow, there's going to be repercussions for how you acted today. Yeah. But I knew I wasn't going to get anything out of her, and she could get to the point where she would intentionally do something wrong and she could get injured. Yeah, okay, so you wouldn't push against her because she'd push back. Right. But if you backed off, then you'd get more out of her. I would get more out of her, yeah. The and we may be on beam and that's happening, and I'm like, okay, we're going to go to floor. And she could have an amazing floor rotation. Right. She just didn't want to do on beam what I wanted her to do that day. Yeah. And so when you say, obviously, that, yes, she's talented, but there was so much more than just working with her.
a talented athlete technically, or physically, I should say, but technical stuff you still have to develop. This is coaching, isn't it? This is the art of coaching.
Right.
Understanding the athlete, knowing when to push and when to pull.
And I've coached, the most recent elite that I had.
Yep.
She completely different type of athlete. She's the type of athlete that the assignment is do 10 and she does 15 because even though she made 10, she didn't like 5 of them. So she did 5 extra.
Yep.
And Simone was the negotiator. Like, I know I'm supposed to do 5, but if I stick 3, can I stop? Sure, stick 3.
Yeah.
And she would because she didn't want to do 5.
I see. Good stuff.
Yeah.
Excellent. Is there anything else that you want to share with the audience before we open it up to them in terms of any philosophical things or happy to go?
Just be a kind person. You're dealing with kids. And even, if you're dealing with elites who are an adult or, your upper levels that are adults, you have to change how you talk to them based on their age group because your 18-year-old isn't going to respond the same way that your 9-year-old does. And so that's really important. Like, you can't be so stuck in your ways to say, it's my way or the highway, and if you don't understand me, too bad, because then you're doing a disservice to the great coach you could be.
Nice. I like that. Thank you very much. Brilliant. So what we're going to do now, we've got 20 minutes still. We've got a lot of time. Hoping there's going to be a lot of questions. So let's open this up to the floor. So we get some couple of roaming mics going, guys. Excellent. Right. So raise your hands if you've got a question. Just make sure I've got a few. I've got one here, got one at the back there. Good. We have got going. 3 there. Excellent. I'm happy about that. Yeah. Where's my roaming mic team? Oh, here we go. Okay, let's come to the front here, please. We've got Carly. Nice and high in the air, Carly.
If I can spin.
There we go. I'm going to get rid of this.
Hello. Can you hear me?
Yeah. We can hear you.
You mentioned teaching being in control on beam.
Oh, there you are. Okay.
Have you got any tips for how you teach a child to be in control on beam?
On beam, I break it way down. We do a lot of landings because the safest position on beam is to be standing on 2 feet, right? So I make sure that that's the foundation of everything, that they know kind of where their grounding is on beam. And then so we go, even with the upper level athletes, we'll start a day of series on beam. We start with landings from handstands and then from cartwheels and before we get into the flight elements. And so their body and their brain are already warmed up to being in that. And that's something you can start with your babies on beam. And then by the time they get to upper levels, they're confident. It's my biggest thing. Landings. Like when I am coaching beam, I never say stick. I say land because the brain is triggered into what's that landing position. And it's different based on the different kinds of skills. But they know what skill they're working on and their body just starts to go to that landing position. And I tell them, like, when you're upside down, when your hands hit the beam, you should already be thinking about the landing. I don't want you to think about the save. I want you to think about the land. As soon as your hands hit those beam, what's my landing? And it works.
It works?
It works.
This is for you, by the way.
Thank you.
So, is there another question from the audience? There was a few hands there, which is fantastic. Let's go to the back of the room, please. Either or, we're going to get them both done. So keep thinking of these questions, guys. Don't be shy. I'm going to check the SMS code.
Hi.
Someone in the back, right?
Someone at the back.
I see a hand. Okay.
Hi. You talked about Simone self-sabotaging and intentionally failing on skills that you knew she could do. Did she ever actually have any mental blocks or ever suffer from lost move syndrome?
Yes.
And what did you do to overcome that?
Well, so funny, I'm talking a lot about series on beam. She had a lot of mental blocks with series on beam. And those times I would become that coach who was like, no, you're going to do it. But I wouldn't make her do it in that session. I would say, if she was having a mental block one day, I would say, okay, every day until you're no longer scared to throw your series, every day at the beginning of practice, after you stretch, you go to beam, and you're going to throw 3 series. I don't care if you make them or not. You're just going to get up and do them. You can start with the mat stacked all the way up and pull all those mats out. But once you've made 3 on a high beam, you can move on to the rest of your assignment. So that's kind of the biggest way that I broke through with that. She's a normal, well, she's not a normal person, we know that, but she goes through the normal gymnast stuff. She's gotten the twisties to where gets lost in the air, but she's the kind of athlete that she won't do a skill if she knows she's going to be lost. Like, honestly, in 12 years, I've seen her get lost 3 times in the air and land in a way that was scary. So, like, knowing her and knowing that, I never gave her a hard time for not doing a skill. And she was, there was one point where she couldn't do her double-double on floor. She couldn't twist on vault. She couldn't twist off bars. but she could do her full in off beam with no problem. So we just did a whole bunch of full ins off beam, and then one day it went away. So it's kind of like that push that you do. If you make a big deal about the fear, then it feeds the fear. And I think the best thing to do is to pull back a little bit and just say, okay, well, what's not scary? First of all, tell me what you're afraid of. What do you think is the worst thing that's going to happen here? And break it down from that. And so if you ask an athlete that, they're going to give you an idea. First they'll go, and like, no, you know. And like, to me, this is a cop-out. I tell all my athletes that a shoulder shrug or an I don't know isn't an answer. It's a cop-out. So tell me it's okay to tell me that you're scared, and it's okay to tell me why you're scared, because I can't help you if you don't tell me what you're afraid of. So with that concept, but finding out what they're afraid of can help you figure out what the best methodology is to get them out of fear. And I guarantee just telling them to do it is not. I know it might sound like I'm contradicting myself, because I was telling Simone, you've got to get up and do 3 each workout. That was different because I said, start on the low beam, stack mats, lower a beam, do whatever you need to do. It's not the just get up on the beam. And I remember her father at one point being like, just get on the beam and do it. What are you scared of? And I was like, Ron, would you like to get up on that beam and see what it looks like up there? Because it's very different than you think it is.
Yeah. Thank you very much for the question. Great question. I think there was someone else, at least one other person back there. Yeah, we've got some others at the back. Fantastic.
I really love your philosophy, but it sounds like a lot of people have challenged it. Where did you get the confidence and conviction to really stick to it in the face of that challenge?
I think that I just had to believe in myself and believe in the education that I had, and absolutely it's just gymnastics. If it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out. But it stayed true to the core of what I believed in. And yes, I had to fight a lot of people for it. And then as Simone kind of came up in the ranks, then the conversation turned from you're never going to make it to, well, you made it because she's super talented. And forgetting about all the stuff that happened in the middle. But all the stuff that happened in the middle is what made her so successful. So you just have to stick to who you are.
Thank you very much. There's more at the back, I'm sure. If you just put your hand up again. There was one more hand. Yeah, there we go. Microphone is on its way. Can you see back there? Mm-hmm. Yeah, just about.
Yep.
Through
the fuzz.
Through the lights and the fuzz.
Okay, so you've spoken about Simone having some lost move issues and the like. Is there a skill that she physically struggled to learn, or an area of skills that were less natural to her than the things that we all see her do?
Her Tkachev on bars took about 4 years to learn. The very first time that she caught it, she fell 4 times in the routine, but she caught the Tkachev.
Oh, really?
So that's another little good tidbit about her. I think that was the only skill. And her Chang on vault, we went really, really slow with it just because we just didn't want to rush it. But the Tkachev was like, she didn't have a single bar release because, again, when she started swinging bars, her hands were like this big and she was just terrified. And one of the national teammates told her, just throw it so early that you think you're going to land on the bar. And that's what she did. And she caught it instead, but then couldn't do anything else. It's a pretty funny video, actually. You should watch it.
Where is it? No, I'm joking.
On YouTube.
Okay. Great. Next questions. I have got some that have been texted in as well. But yeah, okay. Oh, this is great. We've got 3 others. Is that another one at the back? Cool.
How much do you think coaching is about coaxing and knowing the people rather than coaching the skills?
Oh, I think it's the majority of it because, I guess that goes into the tactics you were talking about. Like the tactics are that little bit at the end, but being able to coax people into getting them to convince them what you want them to do. Told this story earlier too. So a big thing with Simone is, I'll take her beam dismount, for example. She's had a full in on beam for a really long time. And it took me a year of telling her, you could do a double-double. You could do a double-double. And she's like, yeah, I know. I just don't want to. And then one day I was like, yeah, they look good today. You could do a double-double. And she goes, okay, fine, I'm going to do it, but video it in case I die so people know I did it. And so that was the first time that she did it. And she was like, oh, I didn't die. That's cool. Let me see the video. So yeah, definitely. And you're coaxing, that's the thing, it's coaxing. You have to really take your time. And it's almost like, especially with really talented, stubborn athletes, you have to convince them that it's their idea. I mean, I guess it's just stubborn people in general.
In general.
Yeah. You have to convince them that it's their idea.
Yeah.
So.
Awesome. There was a couple. Okay, we'll go one more. And then if we can bring a mic to the front, there's a couple of questions at the front here as well. Thank you. After this one.
Hi. So you've spoken, I mean, you've coached the greatest of all time. And from an outside point of view, you look and go, well, she's so motivated and so driven. It's so easy to coach her and everything like that. But did you ever get to the point where you thought, how am I going to motivate her to do better? You know, she's already at the top. She's almost guaranteed a win every time. How do you motivate that? How do you get her to do better?
Yeah. I mean, there were times when it was a struggle, like when she was thinking about not doing gymnastics anymore. It was hard to motivate her then. And then as we got closer to Rio, it was more about, not getting bored in the gym. You know, so we would still do some fun skills every now and then, but could you imagine if we had done a fun skill and she had gotten hurt? Like, that would have been... So I was getting a little bored. She was getting a little bored. I mean, that's just the reality of it. But I think that that's what you have to do when you get up to that point and you have to weigh the risk versus reward. And, I mean, we'd show up to camp with some new skills here and there, and we'd be told, don't do it. It's not worth the risk. We're like, but it's beautiful. Why not? Don't do it. So it was just... it was patience for both of us. I mean, I had to be patient with it as well, I guess.
I'm just going to ask one more question on that. What was the coolest thing that Simone did? In your eyes, what did you like the most, whether we've seen it or not?
The coolest was probably the triple-double the first time she did it, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, but she was like, I want to say she was like 14 the first time she did it. Maybe 15, I don't know. Something like that. It was a long time ago.
Pretty cool.
Yeah,
I'd say.
and the triple on vault when she finally was getting them around. But,
Okay.
Yeah, but still, again, those things weren't worth the risk.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
But
that's play.
yeah, that's
that
play.
was the
That's
playtime
play into
stuff.
the
That was
pit, and like no pressure or anything like that.
The fun stuff.
Right.
Cool. Right. So if we can bring a mic down towards the front. So there was a couple of questions this kind of area. There we go. Yep. Thank you very much. You're gonna be exhausted, aren't you, after all this running around? And then I'll go to the phone in a sec.
So in terms of talent ID, you said you sort of have like an organic method where you let them sort of push up to a like level of skill and then push up again. How do you balance that with making sure they have like proper foundations and basics, but also letting them like rise a little bit?
Well, if they have the proper foundations, then that rise is just going to be really natural and safe, and it's not scary. You know, if you see that certain shapes are good on bars, you know that you can take them to the next skill. You know, if a vault entry is safe and they're getting a good block, well, yeah, you know, we're gonna turn that pike into a layout, or we're gonna turn it into a tuck full or something like that. So I mean, when I think about it, it sounds like lazy in my head to say we just let them progress naturally, but that's the reality of it. And then each child has their own sense of accomplishment, and they tend to compare themselves less to the other athletes. So that answers.
Thanks very much. Nicola, did you have a question? Yep. Do you want to pop your hand up so that... There we go. Thank you. And then I'm going to go to the SMS. We've had some text-ins.
The shy people?
The shy people. Well, you know.
Hi, Amy. You mentioned that if Simone had the day where she didn't want to do a skill, that you'd just go with her and say, that's fine, don't do it today, you're going to injure yourself. But you said, but there would be repercussions the next day. Now, I'm sure we all in that position where that next day comes, nobody wants to punish, but how do you then get them over that? Well, I'm not going to do it today either. What did you mean by repercussions?
Well, I guess so. Take beam for one, example. One day she just kept jumping off the beam, and I knew she was jumping. She didn't want to be there. She was jumping off, and I was like, that's fine. If you don't want to finish your 5 routines, that's okay. But tomorrow you're going to have 10, and you don't get to count the ones that you did make today. Like, she only had like 1 routine left. It was something silly, and she just wanted to have control. So I gave her control in that moment. And the next day she came in, she had 10, and she didn't think I was serious. And I was like, you only need to do 4 dismounts. You can do timers for the rest. That's fine. But you've got your 10 routines. And then she was so angry that she rocked out those 10 routines in like 20 minutes. Like, she was mad. She'd like hit the ground. She'd get back up and she'd do it again because she was like, but she knew that was, so it was setting that boundary of, yeah, you get control today, but there's always repercussions for your actions no matter what you do. So she wasn't being treated like a princess. Oh, honey, do whatever you want. It was like, we still have to get these numbers done this week. We can split it up over the 5 days, or you can choose to do it all in one day. What do you prefer?
Thank you very much, guys, for your questions. I'm just going to go to the text-ins now we've had for the last
I feel like I
5 minutes
swing
or
back
so.
over this.
Yeah.
Okay.
This is an interesting one. Sorry, this isn't a strategy-related question, but I read online that a while ago, Simone was playing with round-off double tuck-back to land on the beam. Mm-hmm. True or false?
True.
True.
Well, but not for real. Like on the fat beam on the floor. Like that was one of the play days. And I don't know, she was probably 12 when she was doing that.
Probably just 12, just
I
playing.
I was like, think you could land a double back on that? She's like, I think so, and just tried it. And did.
The extension was, do you think we'll ever see anyone, Simone or otherwise, compete this skill or similar in our lifetime?
No.
Because it's even crazier than Simone, huh?
Well, yeah, and I think that, like the girls always say, I'm sure your athletes say this, I wish the beam were wider. And I say, could you imagine what you'd be expected to do if it were wider?
That's a good point. It's a very good point.
Yeah, so it was on like an 8-inch beam, but on a spring floor. So it doesn't, it counts, but it doesn't. The fact that she thought, I can do that is...
Yeah, it's crazy Simone. Next question. How did you judge how to pace Simone so that she didn't burn out? How did you learn to judge when she was ready to perform a skill by herself?
Well, Simone never likes to be spotted, ever.
Okay.
Like she has incredible air awareness, so I was never worried about her falling. So I was like a drill queen. And then it was like, okay, you have A, B, C, and D. Now put A to B, and then B to C, and then we go A, B, C, D, and we'll get the whole thing in there. As far as pacing her, it was really just making sure that she had fun. And it doesn't have to be fun every day, but she had to have a reason to come into gym every day and love what she does, because the hours, the strain on the body, the lack of boyfriend, the lack of school dances, all of that stuff, that can really get to a teenage girl. And I want you to be a kid. Like, she only trained 5 days a week, the majority of her career. I'd say up until the year before Rio. We just did 5 days a week. Until about 2 years before that, she only did 20 hours a week, because I was like, you need to be a kid first. Like, that's so important. And when it's crunch time, she was willing to put in the extra hours because she hadn't already been burnt out by too many hours and too much pressure.
Yeah. Nice. Do you feel pressure that you're expected to create another Simone?
Oh, yes. Yes. I've had a lot. These past 2 years have been probably the hardest of my coaching career, because parents have moved from all over the country for me to train their kids, thinking that I can make them Olympians. And the reality is that you have to have the right athlete. You have to have the right coach for that athlete. And, I'm not the right coach for everybody, but you have to have the right coach for the athlete. The athlete has to have the financial means. The parent support has to be correct. The business support has to be correct. That was kind of one of the reasons we left the small gym that we were at, was because even though I'd worked there for 17 years, and we left because the owner, I said, it was after her first Worlds win, and I said, you should put a banner outside the gym that says, home of national and world champion Simone Biles. And his response was, why would I spend money to put up a banner for her? And I'm like, okay, you're an idiot, because that's advertising for your business and what you created here. So that was kind of the beginning of the end for me at that gym. But we didn't have the support there for an elite program. So again, that's something that was talked about earlier. If you don't have the support, if that's one of your roadblocks, it's going to be an issue.
Yeah, and a lot of things have got to align for a result like that to happen.
Right.
It's not.
Yeah,
never
her parents
simple.
were incredibly supportive.
Yeah.
They let me coach. They didn't get over involved. And I think that's essential as well.
Yeah. All that balance. Excellent. I think I've got another couple of questions here. With Simone being your first elite, was it hard to walk into the room with other high-level coaches? Did you ever feel other people felt that you shouldn't be there?
So the way that the USA system is structured is that we have a developmental program, and then we have our national team program. So we started out in developmental program, and Marta was my developmental coach. So that was like, we call it like our class. She was the last class that she took through the developmental program, and then we moved into national team. So that situation was very natural. But I do remember the very first time the very first time we got invited to national team camp, she hadn't won anything yet. She had, or maybe it was after she won her first classics. And we were invited to national team camp because there was a space and we lived close. So I was like, great, we'll take up the opportunity. So I called around people that had been to national team camp and I said, is it any different? Like, because I need to know, like, I want to prepare. I'm not just an idiot and going to walk in so I was like, I want to prepare for it. And I was told, no, it's exactly the same. It's was not the same at all.
Yeah.
And I walk in and we're in the squad with Nasty Liukin, Rebecca Bross, Caitlin Ohashi, and Simone. And Simone's like, everything she does at this point is like this. It's not pretty yet. It's not there. And so talk about feeling intimidated.
Right. Yeah.
So that was my very first experience. And then we didn't go back to national team camp right after that. We did, so I think that was actually before her classics win. And then when we were actually on national team, I remember walking into the gym and there's this hallway you walk up and Marta's office is here and there's like a seating area here and then there were benches against the wall next to the vault runway. And interestingly, and it's an interesting question because at that moment I had to decide, I see all of these coaches over on the right by Marta's office that are people that I really need to learn from. And it wasn't about like being starstruck. It was like, I need to be in on their conversation so I can hear what they're talking about because that's the only way. I know I've got a hot kid, but that's the only way I'm going to really excel as a coach, listening to them. And then the other side was coaches that I didn't really know and, they weren't familiar to me. And I made the decision to go and sit with the coaches who had the more experience so I could learn from them. So I think that's really important. It was very uncomfortable, Talk about stepping out of your comfort zone, very uncomfortable for me because I'm not a person who just will throw myself into a situation like that. But I do think it made all the difference.
Well, we're glad that you did.
Thank you.
So thank you very much for everything that you've done for the sport of gymnastics, you two together, because you've pushed the sport on, you've pushed the boundaries, as you were discussing earlier. Congratulations for all your success.
Thank you.
And of course, congratulations for the future. But thank you very much for being with us today. Much appreciated. Ladies and gentlemen, Aimee Boorman.
Thank you.
Hands up for your colours.
Thanks so much for listening to this episode of the Gymnastics Growth Show. Now, if you're an ambitious gymnastics coach with a hunger for self-improvement, check out my Gymnastics Growth Academy, where you'll find members from over 40 countries, all accessing my masterclasses, courses, templates, live community calls, exercise libraries, and so much more. It's a program that members have described as life-changing. So why don't you check it out for yourself? Head to gymnasticsgrowth.com to learn more. See you on the inside.